Aotearoa, and welcome to Thursday's Economy Watch, where we follow the economic events and trends that affect New Zealand. I'm David Chaston, and this is the international edition from interest.co.nz. And today we lead with news markets have essentially been on hold overnight, awaiting the US Fed's decision. In the end, the Fed's FOMC trimmed its key rate by 25 basis points to 3.75%, as markets had guessed it would do. But it was not unanimous. The Trump stooge on the committee wanted a far larger cut. But the professional members fear inflation still, and the small trim was the uneasy compromise. The voting was 9 members to cut by 25 basis points, 2 to hold unchanged, and Moran wanting the big cut. Immediately after, the US Treasury 10-year benchmark was active with a softish tone, but really little changed. The S&P 500 rose, and the US dollar fell slightly. More reaction will come after Chairman Powell's press conference, which is about to start soon. Earlier, the report on US mortgage applications was quite positive, up 4.8% last week from the prior week, which you may recall brought a small but unexpected retreat. The latest week, however, was all about refinance applications, which were up 15% on the same prior week basis. And third quarter 2025 data for US payroll compensation costs, that's pay plus payroll taxes plus benefits, were up 3.5% from a year ago, rising at about that rate in the latest quarter too. So American inflation pressure isn't getting any respite from this direction. Quite how odd the US public policy has become is revealed in a current court case. US federal prosecutors spent over a year extraditing a Belarusian woman to the US to face charges she illegally smuggled US tech to Russia for its war on Ukraine. Then the ICE agents stepped in, accusing her of being in the country illegally, and deported her, collapsing the case. Moscow smirked in satisfaction. In Canada, their central bank stood pat, holding their policy rate unchanged at 2.25% as widely expected. They say this is about the right level in the current uncertain environment. But they were surprised by the upside growth in GDP at 2.6% in the third quarter. They found their labour market improvement better than anticipated as their unemployment rate fell, and CPI inflation slowed to 2.2% in October, and they see core inflation remaining in the 2.5% to 3% range there. Across the Pacific and China, there was a slight rise in CPI inflation, enhanced because the previous inflation was so low. Their inflation rose to 0.7% from a year ago in November, as expected, and accelerating from just a 0.2% increase in October. This time, food price inflation was very low. It was the second consecutive month of consumer inflation and the fastest pace since February 2024. Meanwhile, China's producer prices fell at a steeper deflation, down 2.2% in November from a year ago. And the IMF raised its forecast for growth of the Chinese economy for 2025 and for 2026, now expecting to see an expansion of 5% this year. And some influential analysts are saying the Chinese yuan is 25% undervalued and will appreciate more than forward contracts are pricing for 2026. And in the EU, the ECB boss, Christine Lagarde, says they will likely raise their forecast for EU growth as well. In Australia, if you're retired and have assets, you need to pay a tax on a deemed rate of interest on your assets, irrespective of what they actually earn, if anything. That rate depends on how many assets you have. They raised it in September 2025, have now signalled they'll raise it again in March 2026. The US Treasury 10-year yield is now at 4.16%, dipping 1 basis point from this time yesterday and holding after the Fed decision. And the price of gold will start today at $4,204 an ounce, down $17 from yesterday. And we should note again that silver has set a new record high again, just under $61 an ounce. And American oil prices are little changed at just on $58 a barrel, while the international Brent price is just under $62 a barrel. And the Kiwi dollar is 10 basis points firmer from yesterday, now just under 57.9 US cents. Against the Aussie, we're again essentially unchanged at 87.1 Australian cents. Against the euro, we're down 10 basis points at 49.7 euro cents. That all means our trade weight index starts today at just over 62 and down 10 basis points from yesterday. And the Bitcoin price starts today at $92,274 and down 2.3% from yesterday. Volatility over the past 24 hours has been modest though, at just on plus or minus 1.4%. You can get more news affecting the economy in New Zealand from interest.co.nz. Kia ora, I'm David Chaston, and we'll do this again tomorrow.